as an entrepreneur, there is this constant feeling of pressure that we have to be working. Like every moment not spent in productivity is a moment that a part of us feels like is wasted. This video, I'm going to break down to you why that is actually a myth and why it doesn't have to be that way when you understand the root driver that is causing this feeling and why that feeling actually has nothing to do with whatever your workload or situation actually is. Okay. So when you understand that emotional driver, what you're going to get is you can shift the overwhelm of that overwork into what I call this idea of peaceful fuel, right? How am I fueled by peaceful patterns of thought, feeling, and action to be more effective as a leader, CEO, and business owner? Okay. So that's what I'm going to be diving into using a live example. So we're going to go into how to find that root cause. I'm going to share with you the steps needed to shift those stressful patterns into that peaceful fuel. And ultimately, so how you can get more stuff done with a lot less stress. And the live example I'm going to be referring to is a clip from an actual coaching call with an entrepreneur named Susan Powers, who is struggling with overwork. She originally came to me to be coached live on my Joyous Profits live coaching podcast. She's episode 263 if you're interested in watching that live, which is linked below. And that's where the clip that you're about to see is going to be from. And if you've never seen my podcast before, this is where I bring on successful entrepreneurs and then coach them live on air to turn their stress into more peace. And in blueprint for them, what they need to do to translate that peace into more stress-free profits. Let's get to the clip. You'll see my breakdown and analysis of it right afterwards. So here's Susan, and here's her talking about her struggles with overwork.
So my tendency is to just hunker down and work so hard that it's almost ridiculous. And I do that because it relieves anxiety. I think if I'm just like, I'll just outwork any problem.
Okay, got it. So just broadly speaking, then, whenever there's an issue, my default pattern is to just outwork that issue because that will relieve my anxiety. So why is that a problem? Let's just say it seems to be working for you. So why is that actually a problem for you?
It's a problem for me because I don't think it's always as intentional. And I think people need to reset and relax to show up as their best selves, right? So, like last week, for instance, I was working pretty much every night till I went to bed, and I just don't I don't want to live my life that way. I don't think you need to as an entrepreneur. It's fine to work hard, but I just don't. I don't know. I just know it's a bad cycle to get into, and that's not how I want to live my life.
All right. So what you just saw in that particular clip was the beginnings of how I began to coach Susan through the overwork stresses that she was having inside of her business. From that particular clip, there's actually 4 core things that I just want to bring up as the context, with which I'm going to show you like what was the real root reason behind this and what do you do to actually solve it. Okay. So number 1, she's aware that she overworks, but she doesn't like it. Okay. So she's speaking about it in a way that seems like the overwork is unavoidable. And to a certain degree, the way that the business is right now and her experience of it, that is true. But the reason why it's not actually useful to root into that truth as like unavoidable is because there is something that's actually driving that behavior, which is at the root of this whole pattern, not just for Susan, but for every single entrepreneur that I work with that has this particular issue. Okay. So I'm going to deep dive into that, but I just want to set the stage here first. Number 1, she's aware that she doesn't like it. She's aware that she overworks, but she finds it unavoidable. Okay. Saying, I don't want to live this way, because this further reinforces it. Why? Because most entrepreneurs get into business to have the freedom to do what they want with who they want, when they want it, and to basically have the freedom to enjoy the money that they are making. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs that get stuck in these overworking loops lose sight of the fact that the reason I got into entrepreneurship to begin with wasn't to experience life in this particular way, right? Now, at the beginning stages of your business, yes, you do have to do all of the things, This is more of a problem for more established, already successful entrepreneurs. That pattern of overworking basically creates the cycle that she mentions that drives what I call the overwhelm hamster wheel. Okay, so what is the overwhelm hamster wheel? That is basically the cycle and the pattern of behavior driven by this tendency to outwork all of your problems. So, like I said, outworking your problems is how you got the success that you have. It is not going to be the pattern of behavior that gets you to whatever your version of the next level is. And that's exactly what I go into with Susan on the full episode. What I'm going to talk about now is like what drives that particular behavior. That's the blind spot that most overworkers tend to miss. Okay. But that cycle of trying to solve all problems by overworking, you end up as the man with the hammer problem, right? Like everything for the man with the hammer, like everything becomes a nail. So you try to overwork problems that are actually delegation issues. You try to work problems that are actually leverage, automation, process, system issues. Okay. That is the big problem with outworking, is because at some point in the past, it actually worked to get you the results and the success that you have. It has now stopped working. And basically, the business has become this big burden that you simply don't know how to navigate out of, which is going back to what she originally said. It feels unavoidable. Okay. And that's also why she adds things like, there needs to be time and space available to rest and relax. You can't rest and relax when the driver behind the reason why you work is riddled with guilt. And here's the clicker now, it's riddled with anxiety. Okay. She says it in the actual clip. I'm overworking. I'm always working to the point that it's ridiculous because I'm trying to relieve my anxiety. And it also means that the primary driver behind all of your decision is actually a feeling you don't like, not the needs of the actual business or the actual task. So this is critical because it means, if we go back to what she was saying at the beginning of the clip, I don't like this. This is not the way I want to live my life, right? What did I break down there? The essence of why most entrepreneurs get into business is to have the freedom to do what they want, when they want, with who they want it, and enjoy the freedom of making money that they actually enjoy. Okay. If that is the North Star of why you got into business, but what drives you to climb that mountain and the very real stresses that you have to overcome to get there, if what drives that is anxiety to get more stuff done, you are never going to get to a place of true freedom and peace, because the very thing that got you the success is the actual feeling of anxiety. Put a different way, you cannot stress your way into peace. Okay. This cycle, this understanding of what fuels your behavior, this is what I call stress drivers. Okay. There is 64 stress drivers that I assess my entrepreneurial clients for. And these are all things that negatively impact your productivity, your delegation, and your peace of mind, right? You can think of these as patterns of thought, feeling, and action that negatively impact, again, productivity, delegation, and peace of mind. So one of the stress drivers is anxiety. Okay. Now, how do you then use that information to actually do something and improve the situation? Because if you watch the full clip and even just observe how Susan is talking about these things, she's talking about it as this is unavoidable. The reason it's unavoidable is because she's trying to out strategize and in many ways outwork the anxiety, which is impossible. So these stress drivers, they are oftentimes unconscious or subconscious. Okay, so what's the distinction between these two? First and foremost, it's a feeling. She has an impulse to stop a particular feeling that tends to be relieved when she does more work. Okay, so any feelings that we logically know I don't need to be having. So she's talking about, I don't actually need to be here. I don't want this. I don't want to live this way. Okay, so that is a logical understanding of the fact that this isn't required for what it is that I want. And the underlying feeling never ceases. She's always driven by anxiety to continue to do these things, right? So now intellectually, this is not what I want. but emotionally, it seems unavoidable. I have to continue to work in order to actually relieve this. So, feelings that we can feel, but we logically know aren't necessary, are subconscious. Okay. That is how I define it in my world. So, this is the world of I know what I should be doing, but I can't seem to do it. I understand that logically, but I can't seem to buy into it. Right. Logically, I understand I should be able to just rest and relax, but I can't seem to really believe that, feel that, or buy into it. Logically, I know I shouldn't work this much and I should probably delegate more, but I can't seem to allow myself to do that, i.e., the overwork is unavoidable. Okay. So subconscious, I have some awareness of the feeling, but I'm not sure what to do about it. Unconscious is I don't feel good here and I have no idea why. Okay. Like not enough stuff has been brought up to it. So what this comes down to is these are all aspects of identity. Okay. Our identity, as far as I'm concerned, is everything that we think, feel, and act on a regular basis. So what overworking entrepreneurs like Susan think, feel, and act, right? What reflects their actual identity is that of I am a CEO that's driven by stress. What I want is I want to be what I call a peacefully ambitious CEO, one that's fueled by peace. So if one of the stress drivers is anxiety, the one that is its opposite in terms of peaceful fuel, okay, is actually trust. It's actually self-trust. I trust that the things I have in place is going to be enough to actually move the needle forward. I trust myself to say no and that things will be okay if I say no. I trust that when I delegate these particular things, it is going to get done. And if it doesn't get done, I trust that I can be the one that navigates any of the repercussions and iterates and builds on top of it. And if you view the full episode with Susan, you'll actually see me dive a lot deeper into her control and trust issues. But if we're zooming into now the anxiousness piece, if you are driven by these stress drivers, you have no way to actually transition into peaceful fuel unless you begin to eliminate the stress drivers at the root. To eliminate stress drivers at the root requires basically levels or transformation on 3 different levels of identity. Okay, so first one is the conscious or the mindset one. And this is basically like changing the beliefs that you have, changing the lenses through which you view the world, changing the mindset that you have around it. To me, this is like changing the station that your brain operates on consciously. Okay. Most of the time, people can do a lot of things on this level just by simply consuming more information, right? You listen to things like this, you listen to podcasts, you read books, journal, you apply, etc. You can make headway here. Okay. Where that stops though is when you get to the point where you intellectually are listening to the right station. Okay. So I know how I should be thinking about this. In Susan's case, like she is a leadership coach. She knows all about delegation. She's got employees. She's got people to hand off things to, but she can't do it because she doesn't trust herself. Okay. Now we're looking at elimination on the subconscious level. So I talk about like the whole, I feel it, but I can't seem to buy, or rather I intellectually understand it, but I can't buy into it emotionally. Okay. How do you eliminate things on the subconscious parts of your identity? Okay. Number one, you first have to know how to bring the subconscious to the conscious without your body freaking out. So what do I mean by this? There are very good reasons why you do the things that you do. Okay. You just don't understand the reasons why you are doing the things that you do. So if you are driven by anxiety, that there is a part of you that's operating in some version of the past that is rooted in your nervous system, in your subconscious, that doesn't really understand that like you are an adult in an adult situations and this part of you doesn't need to be around anymore. Okay. These are imprints from the past that have basically never been addressed, and addressed in this instance, meaning they've never had the space to be like seen and heard. They are stuck and frozen in the past and basically experiencing your world as an adult in the frame of wherever it is that they are stuck in the past too. So let's just say the anxiety about getting things done. If you are someone who grew up with a lot of stresses and pressures around ensuring you get everything done, you get very good marks, then that part of you has imprinted into your nervous system and it always needs to get things done. Okay. It's now operating in the business as well, but it doesn't actually have a productive place in the business as well. So you got to know how to access that, allow that part to be aware of, hey, we don't actually need to be doing this job anymore. Okay. Let's not do it anymore. The other parts of this is actually emotionally feeling the things you need to feel in order for that to come to the surface and almost like bubble up and pop. So a lot of this really comes down to just deletion of the things that no longer serve you, but at some point in your past had to be there in order to survive and work through things. When you know how to do that, and in my coaching process, I use over 10 different tools depending on where we're at in order to create inner safety. Because really what's going on here is like your subconscious wants to go this way and your conscious mind wants to go this way. And this push pull is what creates that overwhelm hamster wheel that in this instance, like Susan, manifests as this whole thing about, I don't really want to overwork, but I don't really know how to stop. And that's why the process of stopping really comes down to the 3 stages that I walk all of my clients through. Okay. So number 1 is assess. So you just saw a clip of Susan pointing out that really one of her core stress drivers is anxiety. I assess for 64 stress drivers that are unique to entrepreneurs. And again, these are patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that negatively impact productivity, delegation, and peace of mind. So when you know the 64 stress drivers that are uniquely affecting you in terms of creating a business that feels more like a burden versus the vehicle to freedom that you envisioned it, you now have all of the raw material on what you need to eliminate. Okay. And that's the second stage, which is eliminating the core stress drivers that are creating these negative effects. And like I said before, I use a combination of 10 different tools to eliminate these stress drivers on the 3 levels of identity: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. And the last stage, which is the embodiment stage, right? In much of this video, I talked about how do you go from being driven by stress to being fueled by peace. That comes in the form of learning how to embody what I call your version of the peacefully ambitious CEO, right? So this is an identity where the primary reason that you do things is from peaceful fuel instead of stress drivers. Okay. And this is where you become the kind of leader and CEO that can very easily plug all of the holes that are creating the overwhelm hamster wheel we discussed earlier today, plug those profit and time leaks that are creating that ceiling, and then use that as a backdrop to redesign the business to basically fuel your ideal life, like create that life that money can't buy. Your business is the vehicle for that. And the primary way for you to get that is to be fueled by peace, not driven by stress. So if this is of interest to you, feel free to book a call with me below. You will have a link somewhere in and around this video, depending on where you are watching it. Otherwise, let me know what resonated for you. Drop a comment below, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one.